This is a resource folder where you'll find all the recordings of the Zooms and also notes if they exist. Today, Alice is going to be taking notes for us. Thank you so much. And then other resources that just get pulled in over time. So that's an important link. We also have in there the working document with the purpose and proposed structure. So if you haven't had a chance to see that yet, please go in there. Feel free to leave comments or email me directly if you have feedback or questions. I also wanted to just remind us of the collective impact model that was brought up in 2 sessions ago. James Rarick presented on this model, and some of the feedback that these surveys provided so far is that, we should have a shared theory of change. We should have, at least maybe not entirely, not entire consensus, but at least consent on what we imagine to be the best forward path for creating more access to reaching our goals that we collectively decide on. And I think the collective impact model is a sort of step towards a theory of change. So having a common agenda, having a backbone infrastructure, having mutually reinforcing activities with one another, making this a space that we all feel value to be participating, contributing, but also receiving in our own work. Having a shared measurement system, which is starting to emerge actually, and we'll talk about later. And then continuous communication, all these things are important components of collective impact. So last convening was in person at Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement's office in Kapolei. Thank you so much, CNHA, for hosting, for feeding us. We spent because of the rain, we had to kind of reorganize, and which meant that we spent the first hour just in conversation, eating, just getting to know one another and filling our bellies. And then Kamwala, he took the time to sort of facilitate an introduction and an opening circle for us. And this is a picture of the Oli that he shared. Thank you all who were able to be there. We were able to break out into some interest areas just to kind of get an idea of what we're all here for, why we're here, and what we're interested in and what we want to work towards. And this isn't comprehensive. There's been a lot of expressed interest areas, but this is the 3 that kind of coalesced, one of which was actually 3 different themes: the food sovereignty, policy and funding group, accessibility and gardening group, and then public housing gardens. And today we'll do those same breakout groups, but we'll split the food sovereignty, policy and funding into 3. And then if there's anybody who's like, well, this doesn't really fit with what I'm interested in, we can figure that out too. We had a fun tour around the gardens, and we took a group photo. We got to see how much it's flourished, the CNHA garden, what was growing. And then at the very end, we did pull weeds in their entrance area. So that was fun to get into the dirt and talking in that space as well. The outcomes of those breakout groups, the notes that kind of captured the conversation, I don't know if they were necessarily outcomes. There were some, but the notes can be found in that resource folder as well. Some of the things that emerged from that convening that I wanted to highlight today were the mapping project. So even just if we want to create more community or food gardens, then can we start with a baseline of how many we have in Hawaii? And so I've been beginning a mapping project where I started with Oahu because that was what my program was interested in, but definitely expanding, just keeping a list of food gardens that I'm aware of. And then I've been contacting the kind of points of contact for each one just to make sure is this, you want to be on this list? Would you want to be on a map? Is this appropriate? Do you even fit under a definition? But one person was like, well, what's your definition? I'm like, you know what? We don't really have one. So maybe this is a call to action to the network. We need to have a working, it can morph over time, but it's an idea of where we draw the line versus farm. Is it production? Does it have to be community oriented? Is it private? How do we, if we are mapping access to food gardens, what is our goal and how does that change our definition of what that is? So call to action out there. Also, Jason shared with us, I think it was important to highlight that the city and county is kind of in a space of figuring out what we will do for food systems. Where does city kind of fit in with that? And one of that might be a food systems plan, including food gardens. So just wanted to highlight that as something to, I know it's not happening yet, but it was a great thing to know that will be happening. Another outcome was metrics for measuring the impacts of food gardens, and specifically in the public housing space, so we can better advocate for them, especially because that's a really challenging space to get more food gardens. And so Alice, in a second, I'll ask you to present on that. And then also we spoke about toolkits and having these resources for gardeners, for people who are in the soil and growing food, but also for people who are trying to create more gardens. And maybe a toolkit of toolkits, because there's already a lot of stuff out there. How do we compile it? And so I'll leave it to Alice to talk about public housing, and then I will also leave a few minutes for anyone else who is there to highlight anything I may have missed.
Thank you, Anna. Aloha, everyone. My name is Alice Liu. I just recently joined Hi-Fi in April as the Food Systems Program Manager. Got a lot to learn from everybody. One of the projects Hi-Fi is working on together with James Rarick, our consultant, is putting community gardens in public housing sites. Those public housing sites are managed by Hawaii Public Housing Authorities. James, please feel free to chime in if I didn't cover everything. So since last year, September, there were 2 new gardens put in 2 housing site, as well as refurbished an older one. It was great because James really built that connection with the building manager, that they were able to reach out to us to help to refurbish this garden rather than just completely taking it down, because there were some previous residents built those gardens and there was some fencing issue, so they reached out to us. I think that was a great sign about building partnerships. About the other side, about right now this project, it was funded by Department of Health. There was a 2103 Health Equity Grant. When we build those gardens, it's just get the residents involved. Right now, I think same with a lot of other projects, is facing the challenge of sustainability. How can we build stronger relationship with Hawaii Public Housing Authorities, having this project become one of their priorities, because there are many there's many benefits about having community gardens for the residents, mental health as well as physical health. And that brings to the data collection piece. What data can we collect and present to get attention and also be on their priority list? So right now we're working with Pear Suite. So Kuihi, we also have community workers. They have community workers already in those sites with the residents every month, and that they were able to add a couple more survey questions. I think at this point it's just to collect interest. What are their interests? What are the residents' interests of participating community garden? Not only getting their hands dirty, have to work on the community garden, but as well as just for beautify the lands. Just different interest levels. We're trying to gauge that. There's another one is just also another data for those residents. If they're not participating in the community garden, why? So we're trying to figure out, was it because they're a limited capacity, or it get too crowded? They feel like there's no room for more people to join, or it's just like pure no interest. So right now, those are just some baseline data we're trying to collect. And in the future, hopefully we'll also collect number of participants participating in the community garden project, because this data can not only reflect how much more social connections the residents are making with each other, as well as their physical activity time. Because gardening, we know you're moving around, it is low impact on your body. And then we're also trying just to reflect, and also Hi-Fi will have the cost of building a community garden, the cost for maintenance, as well as the timeline, how many gardens, how much time to take to build a garden. So these are just some basic things. And in the future, definitely we want to collect soil health and other maintenance cost, and how to get this project to be sustainable. Sorry for taking too much time, but if there's any other questions, please feel free to let us know. Happy to share this work.
Thanks, Alice. There is one of the breakout rooms is public housing. So if this is something you want to engage further in, you could enter that room. Maybe we even need a room on data specifically, because I think the kind of metrics you're thinking about for that is also important for other spaces to advocate for more food gardens. But yeah, we can talk about that after in the breakout section. We can spend another 2 minutes or 3 minutes if there's any other takeaways from the in-person, or if you have questions, or just to Alice.
I would add a couple things to what Alice has said about the work that we're trying to do. And I want to acknowledge Jesse Lippman, who's on today, because Jesse knows only too well the difficulties of working with HPHA. And he was one of the first people that I met up with, when I was first asked to take on this work. And I think the thing with HPHA is, yeah, we'd like to see them make it a priority, but I don't have any great hopes that that's going to happen anytime soon, because one of the things that I've learned on this project is their priority is providing housing for people, and that's been a huge job for them. And so I think we're taking an approach of, and this group can be really important for this, is, people who are willing to partner with them to help these gardens happen, because they're not going to do it. They don't have the staff, they don't have the time and the resources to do that, and they don't, frankly, see that as their real mandate. So what we've tried to do on these two small urban projects, and they've both been housing for Kapuna and people with disabilities, is to really work very closely with the management. And I know you have toolkits on the agenda. We've created a toolkit we're trying to work with them in a way that makes sure at every step of the way that they're involved and they're aware of what's being done. And what we're trying to work towards is make it a partnership with HPHA. And we're not there yet. They've let us in, and it's been a lot of work building trust. And again, Jesse, this has been an issue. They had at Kuhio Park Terrace, I think just sort of this trust sort of broke down between the community and HPHA. So we've been really trying to work on a way to get that trust back. And but I think for sustainability, it's going to be, showing them that a group like this, is a trusted partner who can come in and work with them, hand in hand with them, to do stuff that they'll endorse. And then that way we won't see things in the news about them bulldozing a garden because it was put in the wrong place, and those kinds of things. And again, also, I agree with you, Anna, maybe because this is one of the cores to this collective impact is a shared measurement. And it's interesting to me how hard it is to really come up with the right questions and data collection. There's really no one size fits all, because a lot of these things, when you're starting out, you're just trying to figure out how much interest is there from people to do the gardening, and who wants to participate, and then what are the challenges, and then also we're trying to put a governance system in there, and so I think down the line you want to have more questions about, is the governance system being followed, is it working, and things like that. So, it's going to be a long road, I think, working with them, but we are trying to now get a site visit with some senior people from HPHA, so that they're, frankly, at this point, more aware of what we're trying to do. And then hopefully, in the long run, my goal is to see some systems change at HPHA where they acknowledge this work and are open to having groups like this come in and help in getting those gardens established.
Thanks, James. Rufino?
Aloha, James. Aloha, everyone. Rufino with the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. But my question, James, is have you guys did like a poll or some kind of questionnaire for the community at Park Terrace and the different housing places to see what kind of food that they want to see grown in those gardens?
I can't speak to Kuhia Park Terrace. That's Jesse's Kuleana, because KKV has worked really closely with them and has helped with the community. But yes, we did before we ever started, and this is something we've included in the toolkit. The first step is to ask people what they want to grow, to get some sense of, first their interest in gardening, but then actually what would you guys like to grow in your garden? One of our big challenges is that our gardens are very small at this point. We're using, the model developed at the UH Lab School where they're raised garden beds. And we'd like to expand, but these are community gardens. So the governance we put together has been about, this is a community garden. Everybody shares in the work, shares in what's developed. And then for individual plots, what we've tried to say is we'll create spaces where people can have individual, container garden stuff that they'll grow and things like that. But yeah, first step is really to convene everybody, not just to explain the rules, but to ask them what they would like to grow.
Awesome.
Yeah, we had also translated to Chinese and Korean as well. So it was 3 languages.
Thank you. The reason I asked that question is because a lot of gardens I've seen, they just plant, what pre-seed, and people don't really eat what, I hear the excuse that I don't eat that, so I don't want to. But that's awesome to hear that you guys do work with the community to see what they want. A big one that CNHA is pushing for is indigenous, traditional, ecological knowledge, and making sure that the communities here eat the foods and produce that their ancestors ate. And it's something that we are trying to get into the schools. For years, we've been getting pushback by the DOE saying that kids don't eat this because they don't like how it tastes. And when you see how they prepare it, like just boiled, throw some butter on top. I mean, some people that's good, but that's it, and so they don't eat it. And an excuse, they put them back on community. And so I just want to make sure we're working with community, see what they want to eat, and we're properly preparing the food so that reaching out to those who cook those types of foods, palo, ulu, and the different canoe crops, and make a mono. I mean, Namikaze does a tasting menu of ulu with ice cream and all that, and if the kids saw that, they would eat them. And so I just wanted to make sure we're working with community, and thank you all for your time. I'm driving, I would just shut off the camera.
I would just add to that, I mean, at the first building we worked at, Kalanihuia, as Alice mentioned, it's mostly, Chinese, Korean, Thai ladies. And of course, they want all the vegetables they're used to growing. The value of that too is, so when they told us what we wanted, those were the plants that we brought in. And we were kind of wondering how much hand holding are we going to have to do, but we didn't have to do any. These ladies, they took those plants, they knew what to do, they planted them, so you're using their knowledge. I think one of the beauty of this project is we're actually can mobilize like a workforce for HPHA, and I would like for HPHA to see that the community members, they want to do this. They want to go out there and have something to do. I've talked with Anna about how much value there is in reducing some of the social isolation we have in some of these places, but they know what to do. They're mostly the older ones though, right? And the younger generation doesn't necessarily know what to do, they don't even know what a tomato plant is, sometimes. So, but the older ones will take over and do that. So I think it's a really good point, Rufino. I'm glad you raised it.
Yeah, we find that in the
Mahalo, James.
In the community gardening with the city, it's, people will find a way to grow what they want to grow, even if it's against the rules. And And also if we have participants who are not really growing food very successfully, quote unquote, then they're still outdoors and moving their body and in community and like socializing, right? So the food piece is super important. And also like there's all these other benefits. Lindsay put in the chat for consideration, there are also other affordable kupuna housing properties that are not managed by HPHA if interested in exploring potential partnerships for age-friendly food gardens. We've also seen this with city-run like affordable housing, right? There's a bunch of garden beds that were installed at those as well. So there's, yeah, I think this is, thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for putting that in the chat.
Yeah, I just had an interesting point when I saw that what Lindsay had put on that DHHL would probably be very receptive because they have fully established communities they could set aside in their development, places for community gardens, and Department of Hawaiian Homelands is expanding extensively, especially in the regions that are conducive to gardening with a common interest. But also I wanted to ask Alice, and I appreciated everybody's Ike on what's going on right now, but have you had originally with testimony on the community gardens that came here to the state legislature, we had DAGs come in and say there might be a liability issue when the state is involved. Have you ever had any of that with the HPHA or working with Mr. Quinsafi, a liability issue?
That was part of the toolkit. The number one is getting approval from the management, the building management, because there was issues happen in 2019 when when they just built their gardens on their own will without approve, and they build on which is next to the parking lot. There are some hazards or liabilities, so those gardens will be like taken down. I think it was in 2019, one of the gardens just being taken down because it was not approved and it had some safety concerns and everything. But in this project, James identified the very first step: get approval. What is the good location, a safe location, and then what are some safety guidelines? You know, there's no. And also for debris as well, which areas should storage debris? No sharp object like stake poles, no sharp objects. So yeah, so this is definitely also part of the governance system as well. Just have the resident to understand they can't just expand the garden on their own. There should be a policy and procedure to follow.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take this opportunity to transition into breakouts. And then those who want to continue the conversation on public housing can do that in their breakout room. I need your help though to make sure I did this right. I set up pre-named breakout rooms that you should be able to select. So does everyone see at the bottom of their screen the breakout room 4 square icon? No. If you click on the 3 dots,
No.
it says more. Do you see a breakout room option? No. Okay, let me try this. Don't go into the rooms yet. Just let me know what you see.
Thank you all for learning with us.
Yes, thank you so much. This is a pre-named room. So now do you see a breakout room option?
I see it. So it's at the very right bottom next to the leave button. If you click that one and then breakout room, if you go in there and go to the bottom, I think there's 5 public housing gardens, accessible gardening, food sovereignty, policy, and funding.
And you can click
So
join.
don't click join. Yeah. So
but don't click join
yeah.
quite yet, because I just want to introduce the question. So you can see, everyone can see that.
You click leave and then it
Don't
takes
click
you.
leave.
No,
Click
no,
the
don't
button
click.
next to it.
Yeah,
On the
this is
left side
Sherry.
of
I
me.
don't see it. Sorry, I don't see it in
You don't
the.
see it. Well,
Yeah,
I could
I don't-
also, I can
yeah, I don't
add you
see
to
it
a
either.
room. I can
Sounds
assign
good,
you to
thank
a
you.
room if, can you put the room that you would like? Okay, this is what we're going to do. These are the options: public housing, accessible gardens,
Okay,
food sovereignty, policy, and funding. And in the chat, tell me which one, or you can actually, put a heart or a thumbs up to the one that you want to do, and I will assign you. I have hit open rooms.
okay.
So you should, some folks can see it, some can't. But you know, Alice, I did make you a co-host. That may be why you can see it. All right, so I'm going to put the questions, before I put everyone in the room, the questions that I want you here, I can share screen. That I'd like you to answer, if it feels appropriate, are did you join this breakout group? What would you like to see this group do in this year? And then what are some goals, action items your group has for the next few months? So this is an extension of what we talked about in the in-person meeting last time. That said, this might be premature, right? You might still be figuring out like, what are the challenges in this particular group? Like, what are the funding? Maybe you do want to figure out the next steps. Whereas accessible gardening, what are the challenges there? Maybe that is the question you want to be answering. So those are your options. I can put that in the chat as well, but I will first get people into their rooms. Bear with me here. Maybe you can help me, Alice, since I made you co-host.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'm gonna start from the bottom if you want to start from the top.
Okay.
Shannon.
Well, I'm gonna just go by room.
So Shannon asked
stop
question.
recording. And the features might change.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Try stop recording and the features.
Okay. Yeah, I will definitely look at the settings next time.
So
I'm
Sherry,
sure
do
that's
you
what
want
it
to
is.
finish? Sherry, do you want to finish your sentence in the chat?
Oh, yeah. Oh, in the
You were
chat.
still talking.
Well,
Yeah, I know you were still talking.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope that wasn't too rushed. Because of the timing today, I do want to take time to do a share back, so every group can, someone from the group can give a quick summary of what was discussed. And then in the last 30 minutes or so, we will spend time hearing from 3 different people on their respective networks, kind of understand the other networks that exist in this landscape. And then, of course, have a quick presentation also from Shima Bakro's staff on the resolution that was mentioned at the top. Okay, so to start, I'm just going to randomly ask public housing / school gardens, right? Some folks went in there to talk school gardens. Somebody from that group would like to do a 2-minute summary.
Sherry, why don't you do it?
I wouldn't know where to start on this one. But okay, so we started a conversation in regards to how do we get activated? We're talking about Kahio Park Terrace KPT and how to get their gardens going. However, because I'm coming from the educational perspective, I was talking about how we can involve our students from the school level to build these school gardens, to build these school boxes. We know that senior centers are coming up, that community centers are needing these boxes, and we have thousands and thousands of students who are going into this CTE programs. CTE stands for Career Technical Education programs that teaches them how to garden. But even a step farther or a step back, students who know how to do construction. So if we can teach these students to use the models that are coming out of the UH, out of HCC and other building programs, we can teach the students how to build these boxes, give them to the community, give them to homes that need these gardens so they can start to build their own gardens versus just giving them the vegetables that can be short term, but yeah, impacting them by giving them the knowledge, the hands-on ability to gift and create these boxes. And if we're trying to present this to politicians and programs and people who are going to fund them, I was trying to finish with my group that it's important that we put children's faces in it. So for example, when I work with Makalapa Park, we had a student that came up with a video that was presented to the IAEA Community Association that Ati and Wayne has seen, and they found that it was very impactful. So Councilwoman Cordero is now using that video to move forward and asking other people to support the program. So that's what we were talking about in public housing. Mahalo.
Thanks, Sherry. That was a good summary. And I saw that video as well, definitely impactful. That kid did a great job. Can we have the policy group next?
Sure. I feel like since I talk most of the time, I'll share out. But mostly we were talking about the EPA Community Change Grant, and because I think it's an opportunity for this kind of work to be really accelerated. And coming from the City and County Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency, I was kind of just curious if other organizations are considering applying to this opportunity. The pots are huge. It's $10 to $20 million per award, but it has to be used in 3 years. So these are really kind of shovel-ready projects, and designed to really transform specific underserved communities. So yeah, if anybody, I know Hi-Fi has mentioned they're interested. If anybody else is interested, please do let me know. Thank you, Fino. Yeah, we have spoken to Solarize 808. But anybody else, please, yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Awesome. When is the deadline for that?
It's a rolling deadline,
Okay.
so you can apply now, but I think it's up until late November.
Thanks,
And
Jason.
actually, sorry, I threw in the chat in case anybody is unfamiliar with the opportunity. Our office put together kind of a summary of what it entails, and so just distilling the information so you don't have to read the dozens of pages. And I put in the chat. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to copy that link before I forget. Okay, next one, funding group. Anyone want to
Sam, you want to
volunteer?
go?
Yeah, sure, Ken. I think we were backwards. I think we just heard from funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now
Oh,
Basic
sorry.
Presented on funding.
Got
so
it.
Now,
So
Sam's
now we
gonna-
want the policy group. Thank you. Got it. Thank you.
yeah, so in policy we talked about a few different things. Rufino was mentioning kind of just the importance of getting policy to get food into schools and removing policy barriers that, you know, the kind of red tape that can make it harder for things that are already established and there's already the relevant stakeholders behind them and what needs to be there to get it done, and then policy is something holding them back. So that's kind of like maybe the lower hanging fruit that policy could target. And we also talked about the need for a group like this to have kind of proactive policy wing advocating for policy and kind of fighting in the legislative arena for these things. You know, there's definitely a lot of policy that could provide funding, could provide positions, provide structures for these things. So it's super important to have not only like know what policy we want, but know how we're going to get there and get it implemented. And that was something we talked about that I emphasized of just thinking about how functionally we get these policies implemented and get ourselves from the starting point all the way to the finish line, and what sort of organization that would look like and what that would take. Yeah, if anybody else has anything they want to add, please go ahead.
I would say just briefly with Mr. Peck there that we need policy to sort of catalyze progress rather than inhibit it. And oftentimes that can be done both in the state legislative process, which Sam Peck and myself are pretty accustomed to, or even in the city and county, which is often those types of ordinances can be inhibitory. We need them to be more promotive of these ideas.
Awesome. Thank you. I think I'm hearing the word you used, Sam, was like a policy wing, a proactive policy wing, like in this network. And I think there's these interest area breakout groups should evolve into like groups that can meet outside of this time too, especially if there's momentum to address something in particular. So I like hearing that let's think about that for sure as we go forward. Next group, food sovereignty.
Hi, everyone. It's actually a really good segue from policy. We were talking about the kind of roadblocks to food sovereignty, one of them being access to lands to cultivate.
Sorry, Navin, to interrupt. Can you put your mic closer to your mouth?
Yeah, sorry, having some tech issues because my mic is broken, so I gotta talk directly to my camera over here. So I'm gonna get real close to my face.
That's better, actually. Thank you.
All right. So good segue from policy is when we're talking about food sovereignty, we're gotta be talking about access to lands. So we were talking about one goal of this group that we could work on is looking at feasible policy changes to increase access to lands. I know working with the city, we have a lot of what we call unapproved lands in the Department of Parks and Recreation, many of which are being kind of guerrilla planted by community groups. And we want to see some of that institutionalized through either city policy, state policy, or otherwise. We also talked about improving kind of channels of communication to better communicate needs for the farm to school program. You know, bottleneck being that there's some staffing issues with procurement. So looking at, you know, how we can better localize our farm to school procurement processes so that farmers can just sell directly to the schools in their looking at that way. But it was just the two of us in here, so there's tons of other conversations to be had elsewhere. So definitely going forward, hoping we can get more feedback into the food sovereignty group. All right, Mona.
Hello. And then the accessible gardening group.
Hi, I'm Kate. In our group, we had a good sized group, and accessibility means a little different things to all of us, but I would say that access and opportunity to garden and to have fresh foods is a theme we all agree on. Kind of one takeaway in the group was I talked about those pukas, that what's happening that makes it difficult for keikis to have school gardens, for kapuna groups to have, you know, gardens at senior centers and senior housing. And it's that capacity issue. So we did talk a little bit about how the city in the program that I coordinate, we have 500 people wanting garden plots, and sometimes that can be 1, 2, 3 years. So we talked about maybe sharing out these volunteer opportunities where we have a passionate gardener who wants to garden but might not have accessibility, where they could still have that passion and help a early education program or help a senior center to kind of help guide that. So that's a conversation that we're planning to continue to have outside of this. So thank you for the emails. I'll email you guys on Monday. Maybe we can talk about how we can just share the different opportunities, which is what's great about this group, is bringing together all of these groups that we know we can kind of help each other. And so if you're interested in that, you can share your email with me, and maybe we can have a separate conversation on this.
So yeah, Kate actually has access to these waitlist emails, some of them anyway, right? So we could be sharing these things out with them when they come to us saying we'd like a plot. We talked about this at the in-person convening, even having a place where we showcase these opportunities in one spot on the web, on Hui Māla website, for example. Hui Māla, making a note, we need to continue that website conversation. Awesome. I'm speaking quickly. I really want to honor the fact that we have, you know, folks here to present on a couple of things. So I'm going to just move on forward and have, I'll share my screen here one more time just to kind of show you what I'm thinking here. This is it here. So we did the share back. So the statewide Food Gardens Network, this Hawaii Food Gardens Network, is not the only network out there regarding food gardens, right? We have school garden, the school garden, or Hawaii School Garden. We have the school to early child, or sorry, farm to school garden. We have farm to early childhood education network. And we also have Home Gardens Network, among others. I have a running list that I would love everybody's like feedback or just add in there as things come up. It's right here in the chat, but let's take a minute here for, yeah, Home Garden Network. Sathi, would you like to just give a quick introduction and then take, I think 5 minutes is appropriate for, and then that way we have 5 minutes at the end for the bills, for the resolution as well.
Great, thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My first time attending. I was supposed to join last month's meeting, but was recovering from my cold, so could not join. So my name is Soti Aing. I'm an associate professor of human development and family studies based under CETA, the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. In addition to my instructional responsibilities, I also have another 50% of my extension. So I lead a CETA food systems working group. We usually hold quarterly forums connecting, food players together to talk about food sustainability. Lydie, Morgan Bonnell here is also our working group members. I created this home garden network to help me understand the food system, in general, starting from home. So I created in 2018 when I first joined UH Manoa. And the idea of this network project is, to form groups of family, between 3 to 5 families who are friends or relatives. The idea is that they know each other, that they feel comfortable enough to, invite their friends over to their home. So if you have let's say if you have 5 families in a network, they will take turns whenever they're free, usually during the weekend or holidays. They will come to each other's home until 5 times, until every home is done. And the intended outcomes of this project is to encourage growing, learning, sharing, and healing. When people get together, they don't, only share tips and tools, food, but also they share stories, right? And I think that's very important, especially, I'm in human development and family studies. So what we do here in family study is to promote healthy families and resilient communities, right? So by bringing families together, through gardening, it helps, not only, food production, but also the family resilience, right? Through their storytelling, through sharing, and especially, kids, they are able to put down their iPhone, iPad, TV for a few hours, touching the soil, talking with one another during gardening. It's also a chance for parents to, to have opportunity to kind of reconnect, with their friends, and also with their own children, right? And let me share the screen with you. Anna, can I have permission to share the screen?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is our website. So this is one of our family network in Kapolei. And I usually have 1 or 2 student interns, undergraduate intern every semester working for the programs. So I task the student to create 1 network every semester for me. And, they already have their own network in the community. So one of the things I really love about this program is that it gets me into the community. I know different, communities through my students who created, for the program. And so we we developed lessons, 10 lessons for K through 6 level. This is one of my student intern who helped create the 10 lessons, and our lessons are available in both PDF, and also YouTube videos that anyone can access. And then we also develop, like a pre-survey and post-survey before implementing the lessons. So this lesson started from seed to food to tables. And I love photography, so I like to engage families through photos. They love photos after gardening every time, sharing back the photos. It's a good memories, for the families to keep. So these are activities engaging keikis in the process. This kind of smiles and interaction is just keep me going every time I'm in the project. It just make me so happy to see the engagement, especially with father, and children. As usually, gardening is seen as, usually, household chores, women's, work. But, I think one of the goal of this program is to engage, both men and women, especially father, with their children. We also provide composting lessons, from just regular composting to worm composting. This is Kate. Invited her one time to come and share, some lessons, with a program. And these are our engagement with our parents in the communities. So this picture here, you can see a family living in an apartment, so they don't have like backyard, front yard. So we would meet downstairs, putting together a table and soil on the table. The program would supply, seed soil pots, at the very beginnings, and so family can bring home pots. And one of the models of the program is that, you can start with a pot and it can grow on you.
Did you take all of these photos?
Yes, yes, yes. I
They're
love
really good.
photography, so
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I try to integrate into the
Amazing.
program. Yeah. And one of the, problems that we face in this program is that, although it's so much fun, very successful, but one of the things, that I like to share with the group here is, the kind of the rich, to diverse, socioeconomic status group, right? I mean, most of the people that, that can come and, attend the program regularly are those who are able to attend. Those who have like full-time job, good, financial support from their spouse, so it is really hard to engage, those who are really in need of gardening, of food in their home. They don't have time, right? And usually we schedule, but then something happened at the last minute, they, could join. And I think something that we need to address, in terms of, who are we serving, right? Especially, and are there any, networks that you already established that you can connect, the program to kind of, reach out more to diverse families network. So thank you everyone for your listening.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us and highlighting that challenge. Part of this work is also identifying the challenges, right? And that's definitely one we are facing. And I know we have 10 minutes left and we still have 3 presentations. So I want to get just everyone a thumbs up from everybody that you're okay staying on 10 minutes past until 10:40 so we can accommodate. And if you have to leave at 10:30, no problem, but I don't want to, I just want to get your consent before pushing it to another 10 minutes. Thumbs up. Or a shaka. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, thank you all. I appreciate it. I've over scheduled this one, lessons, learning a lot. Next one will be, how about Noelle? Are you still on?
Yes, wonderful. And I can stay till 10:30, so it's perfect. And I will
Okay.
try and be brief and short. Aloha everyone, my name is Noelle Shaw. I am the new Farm to Early Care and Education Coordinator over at Hi-Fi. And Anna just threw in our hub there. It's a work in progress, so excuse that. My position is quite new in that for a long time it was a contract position, and we've recently been able to make it more than that, which really shows a lot about the commitment towards early childcare and farming and making this school to farm movement available to our younger groups. So I was, Dennis, if you want to pull up our slides, you can, but I can also just speak to some of the work that we're doing. If you're aware with the Farm to School Hui, which Dennis will probably touch on in a little bit, we have a groups of different circles that convene and discuss specific parts of the farm to school movement in relation to specific areas. So early childcare is that 0 to 5-year-old ages, and how do we engage those groups with eating local foods, with agriculture and Aina-based education, and then with school gardening or farming. So that's our kind of the 3 pillars of the work. And a lot of you may be aware that, you know, in Hawaii, it's a big part of growing keiki Hawaii to be an Aina. So, you know, our market population for who we're working with is about 87,000 keiki. And when you think about these young people, it's all of their ohana that care for them too. So, and that's their care providers that we're also in the market of caring for. And they all need care. There's no option to not care for these groups. And there's a lot of different ways that we care for them in Hawaii, whether that be, you know, about 60% of 0 to 5-year-olds are cared for in home, and the rest are in different kinds of programming. And there's like 4 or 5 different kinds of programming that is offered here in Hawaii to care for keiki. And it's a lot of work. Just like caring for Aina is a lot of work too. So Dennis, you can hit the next one, please. So yeah, like what better way to do that than doing these Aina kinds of things? You know, and it's really the developmental stages of a keiki, and this is what's going to create all of your future gardeners, all of your future local food eaters, and all of your future land stewards if we start in these young ages. So, you know, just kind of going over the pictures because it highlights some things. This is my eldest daughter with some hanale poi that was sent to her from Kauai to the continent. And again, the foundational food of eating poi as a young person. So we have a great relationship with Kamehameha schools, and they have this program called Poi to Pepe, which essentially each of their preschoolers at their facilities get a bag of poi a month that they can take home. Lawe kahale and take home to their ohana, because it's such an important part of their nutrition and just, again, developing their palate for Hawaii. Then this next picture is Punana Leo Omaui. I'm not sure which site this is, I can't remember. But they did their own little pop-up farmers market. And that was super cool because the Keiki are, you know, involved in how do we purchase food from a farmer and experiencing that. This next picture is highlighting a program called Tutu and Me and their huaka'is to the lo'i, and again, just getting them used to being in the mud and dirt, and so when they get older, they're not afraid. And then the last one here, down here, is from Papahana Kua Ola, which is called the Eke Kua program, and essentially that's like 5 Fridays or 4 Fridays, and keiki get to do Aina-based learning in the beautiful area of the Ko'olau and Kane'ohe. So the next slide kind of just is like our goal in the Farm to ECE circle is to help support and celebrate Farm to ECE being accessible, sustainable, and meaningful part of early childcare education in Hawaii. So that's why I jumped into the accessibility circle and talk stories with all of them, because there is gaps. There's about a 20% workforce shortage in ECE, and the pay is very nominal. It's about $14 an hour. So those are issues. If we're asking them to garden and to integrate some of these things, how do we fill those gaps, and how do we advocate as people who want to see them in gardens, in farms, and eating local food? People. So yeah, please stay in touch. You'll probably see us around more and in spaces. Really grateful to learn and be with all of you here. Mahalo.
Thank you, Noel. Dennis, would you like to present on Farm to School with High Five?
Sure. We should say Noel and Farm to ECE is part of the larger Farm to School program. So if y'all close your eyes for a second, I'm going to scroll back to my first slide at the beginning. Kind of give you a very quick overview. Farm to School as a methodology has been around for a while. It really became organized in Hawaii in the, I mean, it's been going on for a while, sort of informally, but became more organized on Hawaii Island in the 2000 aughts and was formally organized in 2010. I want to mention it's gone through a couple of name changes, and we are actually in the midst of another one. Hawaii Farm to School Hui is going to become Hawaii Farm to School. We're in the process of finalizing that. So you might see on some of these slides, it still has the Hui in there, but we're working on that. But I just want to say, as Noel mentioned, basically Farm to School has three tenets. So there's the school gardens and farms, the sort of place of learning. There's the agriculture and nutritional education, the learning development, learning curriculum, even some workforce development. And then there's the local school food, which can be through child nutrition programs, through sampling food from gardens, through working with local farmers. There's a lot of overlap with food systems, and we can stretch the definition at times. So the Hawaii Farm to School is statewide, managed under High Five, Hawaii Public Health Institute. But then we do have island networks all throughout. So you can see there we've got Kauai, Oahu, Molokai, Maui, and Hawaii Island. I'm not sure, depending on how big your screen is, you might be able to see in the small print, there are different organizations on each island that actually manage the huis locally. So you've got Gross and Good on Maui. Here on Oahu, we have Lighty Morgan Bernal, who I think is still on the call, that is an extension agent for UHCTAR as the Oahu Farm to School coordinator. We have Malama Kauai on Kauai, and then a couple of other organizations on the various islands. We have roughly 40 partners, public and private. Some of you might see your organizations on there, as well as several others. And I'd like to just mention sort of one or two specific programs that we run, and then I will finish up. I'm going to skip the legislation for now. As you can see, we are organized into several subcommittees or circles that work in their subject areas. So you already heard from Noel with Farm to Early Childcare and Education. We also have a school food systems group, school gardens, the Youth Food Council, which is high school kids who are interested in food systems. Then we have curriculum and professional development, legislation and policy, as well as the individual circles for each island. We do a lot of teacher professional development. We do a lot of policy development and advocacy. And many of you might be aware, in 2021, became law in the state of Hawaii, Act 175, which is Hawaii Farm to School. You can see here there are 5 specific goals outlined in that act. And though we do expand beyond some of those goals, that is a big part of our focus. And as you all know, Hawaii has the only statewide school system. So working with the State Department of Education is a very big part of what we do, although we do also try to work with independent schools, public charter schools, ECE programs, community centers, basically any place that serves kids, we're happy to provide support. And given the time, I think I can end there. If anyone's got any very quick questions, I'm happy to answer them. Or you can just contact me. My email is very simple. It's just dennis@hifi.org. You can also look at our website on the Hi-Fi site for Farm to School.
Thanks, Dennis. I definitely see some overlap in these networks, right? So we have networks of networks and these circles that kind of share spaces and topics, and how do we make sure we're aware of what's going on so we're not duplicating, but also like bridging these conversations. So I'm really glad that, yeah, you showed us, both of you sharing kind of what your networks are up to and where we might find alignment. And there's a lot to synthesize. I know we're going over a lot today, so continue to synthesize and we'll have opportunity to ask questions and talk more in the future. I won't over schedule as much. More opportunity for conversation. But today we'll end with the SR 186. So Sam, would you like to, do you have any slides you want to share? I do have a slide that I can share if that's helpful.
Yeah, sure, that works. I don't have any slides prepared. I was going to screen share the text of the resolution if anything, but
Okay.
yeah, this is good.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, so hi everybody again. Sam Peck, ex-employee. I was session staff with Senator Shimabukuro. And yeah, so some of you may have heard about this resolution that came out of our office this session. I believe as it's yeah, so as this is its final form, the description that's being shared here. It started out as specifically requesting the state to establish a community garden on the east lawn of the Capitol. This was just kind of an idea that popped up based off of looking at the east lawn as kind of underutilized, just like a lot of maintenance for grass. I'm sure there's a lot of anti-grass lawn sympathizers in the chat here. So it was just kind of this idea to build connectivity with community, grow local food, kind of a way for the legislature to visibly put their money where their mouth is, in terms of doubling local food production, increasing local food production, and connecting with community. Unfortunately, in its first hearing, they kind of switched the focus and put it over to state lands generally, which is definitely still a good thing, but kind of shifting the focus away from that being established specifically at the Capitol. So yeah, the Senate resolution was adopted by the Senate, which is awesome. And I kind of see that as just a lever for folks in this network in their engagements with legislators and other public officials to say like, hey, look, the state audibly committed itself to increasing local food production on state lands, or apologies, the Senate at least. The full state resolution did not get its hearing in the House, so it's just a Senate resolution and not a concurrent resolution with the Senate and the House both calling for it. Yeah, there were a number of concerns about security on the Capitol lawn and like other kinds of challenges that led the committee chairs to switch it from the Capitol specifically to just state lands, but it did seem like there was some like support from those legislators for the idea more broadly. So that was encouraging to see. And again, yeah, I think this might be a useful tool in negotiations with legislators and public officials moving forward. So yeah, happy to answer any questions. That's just kind of a little bit about where it came from, and how it might be used going forward.
Thanks, Sam. Kiahi, did you want to add anything?
Oh, my apologies for that delay. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Peck. Yeah, Mr. Peck was our committee clerk. He chaperoned, he certainly helped author the idea to move forward with this. We all enjoyed that idea that it was a public display of a position by the state. Let's sort of be clear what it means in this SR. A statute, when we pass an actual bill that is statutory, it really tells the stakeholders, this is what we will do. When we do a Senate concurrent resolution, what it says is both the House and the Senate agree to this idea, and we are strongly urging you to do it. And what that does is we usually have them, we give the idea, we give the framework, but we let the agencies figure out the best way to, and I've never, ever seen a state agency not comply and move forward. Because if you don't comply with a Senate concurrent reso, or what we just call a concurrent reso, it could be a House concurrent reso, which means both chambers, then the state will step in and say, okay, if you can't figure it out yourself because we politely urged you to do it, we will just tell you now how to do it. In the case of a Senate resolution, which is just one-sided, we are hoping you do it. And what's important to note that in the ending of that resolution, what it said was that they would like the comptroller and the chair of DLNR and also the mayor of Honolulu to get together to discuss that issue and then report back to the legislature. That being quite important, but definitely if we're going to push, we want to push for a concurrent reso. And any of the ideas that you guys have shared today, get buy-in from your legislature, get buy-in from your specific legislator, your representative in your Senate. We get a lot of stuff done. And talk to the staffers like myself or like Sam. Sam pushed that reso as hard as he could in every direction that he could to make sure that it saw the light of day and that it moved forward. This is use this building. We the staffers and the legislators, you are our boss. And if you don't give us your ideas, I know some of you were talking about funding. We do grant aids every year. If your projects need a little bit of cash, that's a wonderful place to start. Also, you mentioned that sometimes it's difficult to get a hold of Hakeem Kwansafi, director for, call us, put us on the chat, and we'll remind him. When the senator, at least I can say for our senator, when we ask Hakeem to meet in a meeting, he has never not shown. He's always shown. I know he's a hard worker, and I know we're really trying to get everybody to move forward, but we get your legislators involved, especially with Kuhio Park Terrace. I know that Senator Donna Mercado Kim, you're trying to get a garden going over there. She should be in these discussions, or her staffers at least. At least I know this office, we're extremely motivated in these ideas. And if you get us to push, the senator will be pushing. We can get a lot done sooner. And I think that's very, very important. And I appreciate the time and your attention.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, that didn't, when it was first proposed to be the East Lawn, it didn't occur to me, and then it was changed, the language was changed to other state land. It didn't occur to me to think about public housing sites. But maybe there's marriage there. We have 1 minute left, and I just want to thank you all so much for staying on and listening in. And I'm here until 11. So if you want to stay on past 10:40 to have spillover conversation, to maybe ask questions to Sam and Keahi, if you're able to stay on to an answer, to synthesize what we've been learning today, feel free. But I wanted to just close it so that those who have to leave, we can say goodbye to one another. I'd also like to ask for any new participants or anyone who hasn't taken the baseline survey yet, please do. This is really helpful for me to shape the convenings in the future. I also wanted to share my screen so you can see, and I'll send this in a follow-up email, that there's an event in the second week of June that New Now is hosting that's all about coconuts, and they would love more and more participants. If there's anything you want to share event-wise, feel free to put in the chat. And then I'll send an invite for the next convening, which is tentatively June 14th. Also an hour and a half, but I'm wondering if we need 2 or if we need this to be more frequent. Let me know in the baseline survey or in an email.
Thank you for
Great
organizing.
job, Anna.
Yay.
Mahalo.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Build
Bye.
that capacity. Aloha.
Aloha. Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Jackie, I want to talk more about the liability if you're interested.
Yeah. I am, because it was one of the things that sort of in this building, when they wanted to do the community garden, one of the things they said was, one, there's a liability. If anything happens to that food, the fact that it's on this property and we are sort of caretakers, then how much liability are we gonna have? I know they also mentioned it in the public housing. The other thing was, where are the people gonna park who are gonna use it? These were just, and I know when I list when I want to build a pass, I don't read too much about the supportive testimony. I look at the oppositional testimony, because that's where I want to knock those guys out, and how can we get around it? And my first thought was, and then they said, there's a historic preservation department they're the ones that are going to say, wait, this land that this Capitol sits on is historic, so do we want to just make it a garden? But there were lots of issues. Yesterday's little rain flooded our garage. So they were saying, what's going to happen if we start having water systems, which aren't currently in place, watering a garden on this? So that liability issue was one of the many issues, at least on the garden one. If that's what you were referring to, but how are we addressing liability in all these public gardens was something I thought we probably need to collectively try to resolve.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the first steps. I just have questions, just out of curiosity. Were you aware of Senator Ava's the 70 fruit trees last year?
Yes, yeah.
What was the process, procedure, and liability? What was his?
There was a
I'm very
gentleman
curious about that
that's works very closely with this office, happens to be the nephew for Senator Miley Shimabukuro, and that's Daniel Anthony. And he was the one that said, we need more food everywhere. We need to stop building roads and start building orchards. And how about, and this is what he said, how about we'll plant trees along the roads? If we can just get Department of Transportation to clear that, to not clear it, but make it okay to start planting fruit trees along the roads. I thought it was clever and novel, and there is not necessarily, because it's public land, everybody has access to those trees. I'm not too sure. Just make sure you take those fruits home and wash them very, very thoroughly, and before you eat these fruits. But because I don't think there's a liability. The only probable liability you would have with growing trees next to the road is if those trees fall on the road or the fruits hit cars that are on the road. These are all things but if people pick the fruit, then that liability most certainly will fall on the pickers of the food. Right?
Well,
Can I
state
make a
lands.
cynical comment?
Senator Ava.
Yeah, Senator, wow, yeah. Nice
Please,
guy.
Dennis.
To be cynical, in my experience dealing with a lot of the state, and I worked for UH for 5.5 years, so I do have a lot of experience dealing with the state. There are liability issues or there are procurement issues is often code for we don't want to do it, so we're going to ignore it.
That's why we want them to articulate the liability issue, and can we get around it? And in the cases of these gardens of public housing, which can you? I mean, when Sherry was mentioning, let's get the kids involved, and then when we talk about public housing, they need so much stuff. Let's get the kids in public housing involved, and then I think we are all accomplishing so many things in a single idea of getting public housing to grow healthy food and get the kids involved, have so many boxes that you're left, gosh, we have to start this somehow and get it done. But get your legislators in on it. I don't know about I'll be honest. Sam and I, we know the other offices, but this office, Senator Shimabukuro really promoted all ideas that help our communities. But if you get your legislator involved, that's the voice that gets all the departments to listen. Get your legislator involved and supportive. I mean, answer all their questions, bring them some malasadas and say, hey, this is, or bring some fruit from the garden or something. that's different, that gets your legislators' attention. And of course, not bribing, and the Ethics Commission probably doesn't want me to even say these things. But just to say, hey, listen, we bought and washed and prepared these foods. It came from a garden. We want gardens at, for example, Kuhio Park Terrace they were talking about, or Makalapa, park. This is, it works. Here's tangible evidence. Can you support us? And if they don't do that, then, honestly, find a legislator that will for your community. This is way too important. And I think I was not neutral, but I wasn't really informed really till Sam kind of tutored me on it, or he sort of inspired me. Sam is just a get going. Let's give me a cup of coffee and let's go build gardens everywhere. I was just impressed. I was impressed. So I'm almost.
Yeah, I think that it's the fact that it's shaped to just be like get community gardens on state land, I think gives us an opportunity to really identify a site that's also feeding or giving access to gardening opportunities for a community. Like we could prioritize, we can think about equity. So the evolution of that I think was really important. I don't work for the state. I don't have a lot of familiarity with the state. I definitely think, what Dennis was saying is true. And also they have a lot of naturalized land. So from a city perspective, where our land is, a lot of it is public parks or utilized spaces with other user groups, we have a really hard time like with the liability because they're like athletes or mowers or whatever. And with a lot of, I wonder if maybe getting all those fruit trees on that side of the road there, what's the danger of a fruit tree compared to like a state park where you have all kinds of trees and forests, that have falling branches and edibles, probably unintentionally or planted with the intention to harvest, who knows? But I'm just thinking when it comes to liability, I think state land has opportunity that city lands struggle with, even if they're, and then the thing about, using that as like an excuse for sure, capacity, like I think what I notice is that, and this is why I love this network, is because part of the issue is people don't want to do it because it's a lot of work sometimes. And some of us, not everybody, but some of us are like barely able to do all the things we need to do in 40 hours a week. And so having that partnership with organizations that want to be growing food on public lands but don't have access to land, that's the beauty of these kind of partnerships. It's like we have landowners who need to be thinking about how to get land back in that way, and then organizations who have the know-how and the connection to their community who don't have access to land. So that's a marriage that I think we should be promoting between state and the city. And so just my 2 cents.
Yeah. The one thought that occurred to me with these garden boxes, it seemed like one of the obstacles was the actual finding the material to build them. The senator just this past session was trying to force a procurement rule that says when you're going to demolish a state project, the contractor will be required to recycle. We'll get the contractor that will promise to recycle much of the building material gets preferential choice. And then they just move these recycled materials into spaces which will be hopefully accessible to those that want to maybe take a lot of that wood and build garden boxes with it. So just that whole idea of being sustainable and environmentally conscious, all of this circles around something that might be helpful to this program, or all the programs that you have called today together to get garden boxes at schools or at public housing projects. We need to make it cheap to do. We need to make it clear, addressing all the safety concerns and liability concerns. And then just let the people do. I was just laughing when you said, "Oh, these Chinese ladies do exactly," or whoever it was, the Vietnamese or the population came in and they knew exactly what they wanted to grow and they knew exactly how to grow it. I thought it was just fabulous. That's just wonderful that people just take that ownership and they take that pride and they'll make it a nice space for the entire community, a productive space, a productive space. And I'm hoping this really, you guys continue these efforts. And I hope I'm in this building. I know Senator Shimabukuro is going to retire, so I won't have this office to launch ideas from or to support, but hopefully might be in a different office, or I'll be nearby enough to listen. And maybe we can figure out how best to use the legislature as a tool in support of all that you guys do.
I saw Rep. Corey Chung. He was at Waipahu High School a couple days ago. But I don't think he's the same person also signed on that resolution, right?
Oh,
He was a freshman.
well, the signatories from our side were the Senate. Senator Shimabukuro was what we call the primary introducer. She was the one that introduced it. And you try to get other people that are supportive. If you really want some, for example, if you really had some sort of reso you want, once again, resos, you want them to be concurrent. You want them to make the cross to the other side and you want them to agree with it because that is a very loud voice by the legislature. So Senate concurrent resolutions. So oftentimes, and this is something I teach because I do these workshops on how really the legislature works, is if you get a bill to move and it has too many issues, then what you do is, and it looks like it's going to die, then you just say, convert that bill to a resolution and study the problems that you're having. That's what it will do. Like if it really was a bill that said you must have gardens at every public housing, and then people said, oh, there's liability, and all that stuff, and it's dying. You say, convert it to a resolution and to study the liability and come back in a year from now and give us a report on how to resolve liability issues. So next year, when they say, oh, there's a liability, oh, no, we have the report on it. There are very little liability issues on it. And we're going to follow this model that California uses, So bills are the hammers. Concurrent resolutions are very strong urges to do things, such as encourage you to do what we're asking you to do, or study the problems we had with the bill so we can make the bill stronger next time around. These are the kind of tools. Get your legislator involved. So if you did a bill about like farm to school, I would, if I were the legislator, let's do a bill which we already did, what was that, Act 175? You get the Senator Shimabukuro, the primary introducer. Then you get the chair of education to also to be another co-introducer. Then you get
You're not getting the chair of education.
Yeah.
I think you know that.
Yeah. It's not always easy. I know it's not always easy, but if you can convince them at that level, when people see a farm to school bill or some promoting education and public housing, they're going to say, wow, the human services chair is on it. So we better move it. We better move this along because she signed that bill. Or, like education, the higher ed, we know Senator Mercado Kim is a tough nut to crack sometimes, but if we can just convince her that this bill is good and she signs on, then UH is in the game, right? So
those are great advices.
Yeah. So you get all the stakeholders that you need. And then plus they signed it. They will schedule it for a hearing. That's the problem. When somebody didn't sign it and you're trying to get them to schedule it for a hearing, then you have to, after the fact, you have to go in now and say, can you please sign it? Can you please, schedule it for a hearing? If they don't schedule it, we'll die. So we really do. We want them right up front to agree to that bill, right up front.
Can I ask you guys a procedural question?
Sure.
So I know the Attorney General's office reviews every bill and testifies if there's problems. I mean,
Yeah,
I see them
liability issues, obviously, yeah. They got an eye on.
exactly. So if they're automatically testifying on liability issues and they're not saying there are any, shouldn't that kind of end the liability question?
Possibly so. We could draw it to their attention. If somebody says, are there liability issues? We could look at the pattern. It's like we said, the trees, right? How do the city and county parks do it? How do they, maybe these are acceptable levels of liability, or the risk.
I guess that's kind of my question. If a chair that has introduced the bill and is scheduling a hearing, can they request the Attorney General? Can you please testify on liability issues with this bill?
Yeah. And you ask for, depending on, can you give us, there's kind of two requests. One is, can you just email us? Can you just email us and tell us if this has a liability concern, a legitimate liability concern to the state? And then the other one we always ask, is this is constitutional? Can we do it this way? Or we could say we want a formal letter. And that means they're gonna go and they're gonna do it, and it's gonna look just like some dissertation. All the quotes and all the footnotes are all gonna be in place, signed by the Attorney General herself. Yes, we can do that. And you can ask somebody to do it if you think you want to clear the slate, make it very clear on the path forward. You ask your legislator to request of the Attorney General. And the Attorney General will only do it for state officials. If you guys just call and say, hey, can you give us an opinion? No, they, in fact, yeah, no, they won't. You have to get some state official to ask.
So
Okay,
for
thanks.
for the liability, but yeah, back to the liability issues, like, is it possible just to start a worksheet with, experts in the field? Because I sent a picture of Hakim's response to one of Sterling Higa's. I mean, it makes sense, like some of the notes he pointed out, some erosions, some debris, some like sharp pole points. Like I can see, those could potentially, because the public housing authorities, they need to go through the, what do you call it? They will get vetted by their funding organization. Is this a safe environment and everything? So I think the points he pointed out, it could be a potential like credit decrease for their site. Like for the overgrown stuff and everything, I think if there is starting a list of, okay, how can we address this? What is the policy when creating a community garden? How to avoid erosion issues, how to avoid overgrowing issues, because some community gardens, people grow sweet potatoes and they just go wild. Like some like common
even tomatoes, they go. Yeah.
I think it would have to be
Some, like-
site specific. Can HPHA provide that list of
Yeah,
what they would need to feel very safe?
Mhm.
And that's something you can request, but what I would find useful, and I don't mean to be, it might sound lazy, but I think it's just efficient, is what are the successful projects and how did they get going? How did you control overgrowth? How did you, and that way when you go to HPA, once a garden is successful, and that's maybe the hard thing, that's your foot in the door. If HPA has approved it and that garden is going and they're okay with it, then they can't say no to another garden at another housing.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing with those two gardens now. We're really trying to set up that site visit.
Yeah, that ideal configuration that they approve of, and once you get the parameters like you're trying to find, then it's definitely going to turn into the model by which they're now if they deny you, they have to now give you reasons. Otherwise, it's already going to happen. You're going to put it in. So I appreciate to make a garden a community garden is beautiful, but I think there's that synergism to making a community garden in these public housing areas. I think is almost so virtuous. I just said, wow, we really need to get this going everywhere and in the schools. We're all saying the same thing: fresh food, hands in the soil, return to the earth, know where your food comes from, and then empowerment in food sustainability and food sovereignty. God, all of this, I've never had a conversation with any group that had touched all these bases. It's very moving, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I think for food systems, a lot of, I don't want to take too much time, but for food systems, there are a lot of builds are increasing the demand, like the bugs, some other builds increase the demand. But if the supply doesn't follow the demand, then it's imbalanced food system. So those community gardens, it all come together with egg production and everything. So, but yeah, I really appreciate some of the advices and ideas.
Just always know that you could contact our office. At least I can say that, but I'm here until probably May 31st, and that's it. So, but I'll keep in touch I'll let Sam track you guys, and I'll find out how to stay in touch and link in, or if you guys ever need any legislative advice or bill introductions to help, or resolution introductions, that's something that we can do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, Ati.
Yeah, before we break the group up, Anne, I wanted to ask you a question about you and mentioned city's food systems plan. And I was wondering which departments are involved and how invested are they in creating this? Because I know working with government, departments don't always talk to each other or agree with even within. And so I just wanted to know what the buy-in was from the city on this food systems plan.
So it was, I think, imagined by the food sustainability and security program at this climate change office, the resilience office. So that's the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency. I don't know very much about it. It was just something that Jason had mentioned in the in-person convening last month, and I guess I like to name it so that hopefully it helps it come to fruition. But they are a planning office. I mean, in a way, CCSR, that's what a lot of what they do is supporting planning and getting other departments to get on board. So they're kind of this innovative, younger, kind of edgy office in a way that is, I'm sure, very invested in creating a plan of that sort if they say they will. And really getting other departments to get on board would be the challenge. And it's kind of like what happened with the climate adaptation plan and their also their climate action plan, and then their climate mitigation plan, which is the adaptation strategy, climate adaptation strategy. They create these big, comprehensive plans, and then they consult with heads of each department to act on them. That's about the extent I know of it. And it sounds like it hasn't. Jason really just started a month ago or two now. And then his counterpart at the Office of Economic Revitalization, Alex Narajos, she also started she's just started full time this next week, maybe, I think, actually. And so they're both very new in their position, if that gives any indication as to where they are in that plan. This is them ideating what they can do in their roles. Where does a city government, what is their responsibility in food systems? Because that's also kind of a question mark. It's really exciting because the fact that they're both new in their position, and actually it used to be one program and now they're two separate programs in two different offices, means that they get to get creative with how to best organize themselves and address different issues. Like, I think Office of Economic Revitalization, I would imagine Alex will do more with like farmer livelihoods, let's say, whereas Jason, the climate change office, is thinking maybe more about, I don't know, resiliency and food production, for example, or community gardens, who knows? So that's something that they're, I think, open to figuring out.
There's so many issues that cross over with what this network is trying to do. So is there ways that this network can support that whole idea? Is it made public that we can actually go out there? Because I know, the Office of Resilience, they have wonderful ideas. But I know that they had a lot of AmeriCorps recruits that started with them and are now hired as, So this is the injection that we need, but you also are running up against a lot of, just institutionalized opinions, so to speak. And how do we break into that with supporting you guys? Because you're all in now you're starting to spread out, and I see you're with DPR and they're with the resiliency office. But this new generation of thinking and doing needs to be elevated somehow. How do you do that with all these other folks that are so ingrained in the way they do things and how and why they do things?
I feel a shift in the city anyway, and in DPR. It's slow and it's hard, but it's happening. And I think part of that is because we have a huge workforce that is about to retire, for better, for worse. Like, it's kind of age related, some of these mindsets and opinions that you're describing, and also related to like how entrenched you are in a culture that maybe you didn't necessarily create, but you're part of. So that's one thing that's kind of hopeful. And then also, I really wanted to present today on what I'm doing in my program, because I think it does speak to that shift in culture. But obviously, I'm way over schedule. So
ambitious,
maybe next
very
time.
ambitious.
I'm thinking maybe we need to have this every other week. It is ambitious. I like to overschedule anyways, just in case, but that was a lot.
I see a lot of hope. Anna, this is such a great work. Thank you so much for bringing us together. But relating to what you said, I see hope because right now, Hi-Fi, we're working with Maui Nui, Maui County, actually creating a Maui County food and nutrition security plan. So hopefully have that ready in a few months. So there's one plan we can look at it, and then sharing with other county. What are you doing? What are you not doing? But then there's a central hub, transforming Hawaii food system together. I bet everyone in this group knows about Dr. L.B. Miles. So his work on that website, actually there's exciting news. In June, he will start to have the brown bag series in the research center. So it's 1 hour during lunch hours, and it will be posted to the Transforming website as well. So that is really engage different partners from the holistic food systems statewide as well, like different people just share 20 minutes each organization. What is Hawaii Good Food Alliance is doing? What is the Food Basket is doing? And what is Policy Plus is doing? So there is this platform coming, and I feel like that will be, because these brown bag series is also education tool for some of the lawmakers as well. For some lawmakers, they're just not passionate about food systems. But I actually have someone from AG's office. What are you talking about food insecurity? I have everything I wanted to eat. So these brown bag series will be something to expand the network for people who is not in this group to come see what the work need to be done and what has been done. So there's hope. That's all I have to share.
Thank you for sharing this, Alice.
Yes, and I can't promise or say 100%, but I think there's another food system summit coming in 2024. So this summit hopefully will bring everyone together, meet with lawmakers face to face, and really discuss what are the priorities regarding food policy, or work groups to discuss what liabilities could you help, like can we remove those liabilities. But yes, so it's in the work. I'm doing the fundraising right now. There should be some schedule out very soon, but right now just follow the Transforming Hawaii food system website. So it's posting the upcoming brown bag series pretty shortly.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for staying on way past the end of the call and continuing these conversations.
Well, I look forward to meeting everybody again another time, but Senator Shimabukoro's office, just call our office if you need any help or need to do a conference or something. We can try to plan it out for you guys.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
you guys?
you so much.
I'm gonna run.
Hello. Bye,
Alrighty.
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Happy Aloha Friday.